So in the last tutorial, we talked about our models, we created our post table, and we set up our authentication system and seeded our database. So now let's continue on with our blog idea, and let's start creating some views. Now in Django, views are more analogous to Masonite controller methods or controller actions. So in Django, that's where you put all your business logic. In Masonite, a view is the actual template itself. So that's your .html file. So usually where I like to start is I like to open up the routes file, and I like to start here. So we have a nice route group, which we created in the previous tutorials, which this one is showing the welcome page. We really don't want that. So let's make our home page point to a blog form. So before we do that, let's open up our terminal. And if we run craft, we'll see that we have a craft controller method, command rather. And if we run that, craft, let's clear this out, craft controller, let's call it post. So it'll create a post controller, and it'll put it in at HTTP controllers post controller. And now we can specify that in our route file. So let's open that up, and we'll make this a post controller, and we'll make this blog.form. So we will show the form, and then let's just make another one for now, and we could say store, and this will be store and blog.create, let's say, and this will also be a post method. Okay, great. So now we have the home route, which will now point to the show action on the controller, and we'll call it blog.form, and a post action, which is /store, which points to the post controller store action, and it is called blog.create. So let's go ahead and make that. So we have our post controller, we have a show, and then we also made a store action. So what we want to do is we want to render a view. So we'll need that. So from masonite.view, import view. And we could specify that. And we can return the rendering of the view for the post.html file. So we don't actually have this template yet, so we can go ahead and make it. Now there's two ways to make a template in Masonite. The first way is to go to resources/templates, and we can just go ahead and create a post.html. Or we can go back to our terminal and we could say craft view post, and that'll do the exact same thing. Now also in our case, we'll want to create a base file. So let's go ahead and do the same thing with a base file, and we'll open that up. Now if you're used to Django, this makes perfect sense to you. We'll create this base file, and then we'll inherit from our child templates. So let's just go ahead and make a simple base file. And we can make this a block, and we'll call it content, just like Django, and block. And we'll want to use Bootstrap 4. So if you actually go to the auth base file, you'll see we have this Bootstrap CDN. So we'll just go ahead and paste that as well into our template, and we'll clean that up. Okay, so now if we go to our post, we can go ahead and extend our base.html file that we just created here. And we could say our block content. And we could put all of our information here. So let's just go ahead and put a test here, and let's just go ahead and see if this works. So open up your terminal, craft serve-r, and go ahead in Chrome and open that up. And we made a mistake. It is extends, right? And there you go. So now, not to bore you guys, because I know all of you know HTML. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste this basic form data. So if we go here, we have our basic title, body, and our submit button, which we'll use to create our form. So just showing you guys what I wrote. So it was a classic card with a card body, inside a form, and we have 3 form groups. One contains the title, which has the name of title. This is a text area, which has a typo here. And we'll have the name of body. And it looks like I have 2 names, so we'll move that, right? Because we already have the name here. And we have a submit button. It's that simple. So going back up here, now Masonite has a couple of helper template functions. And if we go here, remember we named it blog.create. So what we'll do is the action will be a route of blog.create. And that should give us the store endpoint. So if we go ahead and refresh and look at our source code, you'll see that the form action is /store, which if we open up our routes again, that was this method. So there's a couple of cool little helper functions here. You can read more about it in the documentation. Our method will be post. Okay, great. So now when we submit this form, it should go to our /store action, which is on our post controller right here. So now the data we want to submit, we're going to store it in our post model. So by default, all models are located in /app/ here's the user model. So they're located in this home folder. If you want, you can create a models folder if you really want to. I prefer to leave them all here and then refactor later if need be. So again, we can go ahead and we can create a new file and call it post.py and do all that fun stuff, but we'll just use a craft command for this. So let's go ahead and clear that, and if we run craft model post, we'll now see that model was created, and we have this right here. So you'll notice that in Masonite, models are pretty much empty, because when we use this model to call our post table, this model will actually take the shape of the table itself. So we don't have to specify any attributes on our models. The models are a lot more fluid than Django's models. Now this has an upside and has a downside. So the biggest downside is that we don't actually know what attributes are on our model, right? Now what you could do is you can remember what attributes are on your model, or we have another craft command called model docstring. So what this does is we could say craft model docstring, and then we put our table name. So our table name was posts, and it created a docstring of all the information on our model table. So we have an ID, a title, an author ID, and our body. Now also by default, this model is not what's called fillable, meaning we can't create things or we can't do mass assignment. Masonite by default protects against mass assignment. So in order to do that, we could call a fillable, and we could pass it a list of things that we want to be fillable. So we'll want to pass in the title, the body, and the author ID. Great, so now we have our post model, and if we go back to our post controller, and we'll just import that from the top. So from app.post, import post. So if we go back to our post template, we could see that we are passing in the title and the body when we submit this. So in order to get information, we'll also need the request class. And we can specify that we need this class. And we can go ahead and say that the title is request.input title. And we can do the same for the body. So now in order to inject this into our model, we could say post.create title is equal to title, and body is equal to body. Now currently we don't have any sort of authentication set up, so for the author ID, we'll just pass in the first one. And then once we are done, we will return a request.redirect to this home route. Okay, now let's see if that works. So make sure our server is running, and in this case it is. And we could say that this is a title and this is a body. Let's submit. And it says that we have an invalid CSRF token. So if you notice, if you look at our form, you can see that we have no CSRF protection. So we could specify that if we just do CSRF field and look at the source code on that. You see that it now has a new hidden input, which is a CSRF token, which is the same token on our cookie. So let's go ahead and try to submit now. So this is a title and this is a body. Submit that. And so this is what happens if we don't have a fillable attribute. So let's just see what happened on our model. And it looks like that was an indentation error. So let's go ahead and try to resubmit, and it looked like it worked. So let's go to our posts, and here we go. So this is a title, this is a body, and this is our foreign key, which goes to our user of Lisa Stone. So now that we have that, we can show all posts. So let's create a new route, and let's call it all, which is a get route, which calls postcontroller.all. Let's go ahead and go to our post controller. And let's create a new one called all, which is going to call this view. And we're going to return a view.render. And we'll just call this all for now. And it's going to be posts and post.all. All right, so we call this post model, which is this model. And we want to get all the posts. Let's go ahead and cancel the server, and let's create a new template, which will be remarkably similar to our post template. So we can actually take this information, plop it here, and get rid of all this stuff. So now you notice here that we're passing in this post variable. So we could loop over that. So for post and posts and for, and let's indent that. We could say that we want to do the post title here, and we'll break a little bit. And then we'll do the post.body. And let's open that up and see what happens. Craft serve /all. And we have, this is a title, this is a body. Now let's output the author information. So in order to do that, we need a relationship, right? So if we go to our post model, we could say from order.orm import belongs to. And we could say that the user, we'll put a pass here for now. We could say that this belongs to, and we could put a local key and a foreign key. So we could say the ID or the author ID maps to the ID of the user table. And then we could put our import down here. So this would be from app.user, import user, and then we'll return that user model. So now let's go back to our all, and we could say post.user.name, and this should output the user's name from the user model. And let's refresh, and we have Lisa Stone. Let's just put some 2 breaks there for now, and at the end we'll put a horizontal break. Now let's just create one more post so we have some data to work with. So this is another post, this is another body, and let's go back to the all, and here we go. Now we have 2 posts. Now let's show a single post. So this should be something like single, and this should show a single post, right? So single / the ID name. So let's go back to our routes. Let's create another one, and we'll just call this single across the board, and go to our post controller, and let's create another one called single. Single here. So now what we'll need is the request object as well. So let's go back to our routes real quick. So if we go, we see single here. We actually need something like single 1 or single 2 or single 3. So what we can do here is we can pass in an ID. So this is @ID. And then in our post controller, we can get the ID, or let's do a post ID rather. The post ID is equal to the request dot the parameter of ID. All right, so this is the param. So these are how you set and get parameters. So if this is a 2, this value would be a 2. So now we could say that the post is equal to the post.find the post ID. And this could be post, and we'll call that post. And we will return the single view. So let's go ahead and make sure our server is still running, which it is. And if we refresh, we now have single 1 and single 2. So that is views, forms, a little bit of models, how to create posts, and how to get and retrieve inputs and parameters. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you next tutorial.